your first commentary around this issue?
Well, I think that obviously the case has been well litigated, but it may not be done. So we should be careful about comments. It is possible that he might appeal, and I think that
when you are appealing, the case is done. The appeal is different.
Okay.
Right.
Well, we lay people think that the appeals are part of the whole ongoing litigation. I think that both of them got justice, and as long as there has been justice, it's fine. I listened to Ahmed Suale yesterday, and he was making comments about what this means to journalists all around Africa and the world, and the fact that what stuck to me was that he said in Africa, sometimes justice is only for the powerful, but the court has shown that justice should not only be for the powerful. So I think it is good for these things to go through fair judicial processes and for people to have confidence in the courts. I hope that Ghana's judiciary is watching, so that in future, whenever they have to adjudicate some of these cases, they will be guided by the supreme interest of the law. I think Attorney Adika was very good in explaining to us what happened, and I hope that would all be guided. And I think that maybe some for advice to Honorable Kennedy Agyapong is that maybe you shouldn't say too much, because a lot of what happened was that they used his words against him. And I also note that there's been an arrest in the Ahmed Suale case. Regardless of what one thinks about this case, I think Ahmed Suale deserves justice, and I hope that eventually he will get justice. That indeed will lead to a trial that will be speedy and fair, and that in the end, whoever the perpetrator was will be brought to justice. That is the best outcome for everybody.
You seem to have joined in a certain comparison that is being made with the courts for America and in Ghana, and some have said that's an unfair, commentary to make, to compare the courts in America to Ghana and suggest that what the courts in America have done is what is true justice, but in Ghana, justice was compromised. When there was a process in the Supreme Court, the majority decision confirmed the High Court decision. It was the minority that, made some of the comments that Anas himself has spoken about, described the judge's work as that was really bad.
It's a fair point. I think we ought to be careful about the presumption that justice was necessarily served in the U.S. court, but not in Ghana. In actual fact, the U.S. system has had critics too. Among them, President Donald Trump, who thought that some of the treatment he got at the hands of maybe the judicial system wasn't that fair. So, and also, we also need to know the fact that this was a jury trial, and the Ghanaian trial was by judges. Sometimes those can lead to different outcomes. But I think that the Ghanaian judiciary should take on board some of the feedback they are getting. And of course, feedback is contextual. This is not a one item. I am on record, as you know, as criticizing the judiciary here, sometimes for political decision making. So it is reasonable for people to speculate that the verdict in Ghana here may have been affected by political influence, even though that is not proven. So both judiciaries have something to learn. And even in the US now, in the last week, for example, President Trump has been critical of judges who have imposed bans on some of his executive actions. So
especially Judge James Boasberg, is that the name? Trump says that judge, and I quote Trump, he says that judge is doing everything in his power to usurp the power of the presidency. He is a local unknown judge. sort of a local champion, a local unknown judge, a grandstander looking for publicity, and it cannot be for any other reason because his rulings are so ridiculous and inept. Save America. Trump, tweeted on March 20, 2025.
Yeah, and the advice for Honorable Kennedy Agyapong sometimes could go to President Trump as well. I think that sometimes he could choose better language. But in defense of the judge, not to talk about whether his judgment was right or wrong, the Chief Justice, John Roberts, issued a very eloquent defense of the judiciary. He said that when people disagree with judgments, the right thing to do is to appeal, and to appeal all the way to the Supreme Court, and not to talk about impeachment of judges or impugning their motives. So I think that was a good defense, and we should also note to the credit of the US judiciary that Nixon, for example, when they took the Watergate tapes case there, even though it had a majority of Republicans, he lost it 9-0. Biden was handed some significant defeats. And I think that Trump too has suffered and will suffer some defeats. So that is how the judiciary works, and we should be careful about criticizing just because we don't agree with them.
You mentioned the Ahmed Suale murder 2019, which is now getting a first suspect who has been refused bail and is put in custody. Now, I don't know, the coincidence, people are saying it's curious. Are you?
Yes, I am curious, and I worry because the Afoko, the Gregory Afoko case is very fresh in my mind. That we need to pursue justice, but we need to be careful that prosecutors, under pressure to quote unquote bring a solution, don't maybe even innocently send an innocent man to prison. It will seem as if, for example, in the Gregory Afoko case, something like that happened. Then I remember that there was a US Supreme Court Justice, Justice Souter, who before he became a Supreme Court Justice used to actually serve as Attorney General in the state of New Hampshire. And he said something that I think everybody in the judicial system should keep in mind. He said, in this office, we don't win cases or we don't lose cases, we just prosecute them. And he was saying that to say that sometimes people get so personally invested in quote unquote their success or delivering a corporate that sometimes they trample over the rights of the accused. So I hope that this arrest is not just coincidence, and that whoever the person is will get due process, and that in the end, both him and the late Ahmed Suale will get the justice that they deserve.
All right. Thank you. Hold on now.